We're going to do something we hardly ever do at AJ+. Use the T word. Terrorist. It's our policy not to use the terms terrorist or terrorism to label a person, group, or action.
Time out. Let's take a time out here. And wait a minute, why would you be afraid to use the word terrorism? What possible motive do you have to be averse to that word? That seems extremely shady that you would not be comfortable using that term.
We don't use them for this guy, or for this group, or even for this dude.
Oh, precious. Did you see that? Let's pause again here, because yet again, he's going to try to ramble on and move past a point that was horrific. He just pointed to the leader of ISIS, the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, which doesn't do anything anymore, who during their heyday were referred to as terrorists. And then he pointed to Timothy McVeigh, a single individual guy who we killed because he did a terrible act. He didn't belong to a group. He didn't do it for Christian reasons. He was an individual terrorist. These three things that he just showed are totally not the same. And he's trying to say, look, all three of these sort of the same thing. Here's one key difference. The first one is alive today and killing people today. The second two are non-existent. They are not players on the world stage. They don't exist. They don't do anything. I love how the second two are white examples. We've got a brown man. We've got this mocha-colored foreign guy. And shockingly, he's taken a stance where he's trying to falsely equate the most evil barbaric people on the planet, ISIS, with the Irish Republican Army and Timothy McVeigh. This is not going well. In fact, this stinks of racism and false equivalence. This smells like progressiveness. Who are these people? Let's look in the corner. AJ+? AJ+, well, it's a very hip and cool name, AJ+. It rolls off the tongue, it's quick, it's easy. I think the kids are gonna love it. Hey, did you see the latest video from AJ+? It's like, they speak to me, bro. They speak to me, man. It's like, they're young, they're of color, they don't wear suit and tie, they say fuck you to the establishment. And they point out great things like ISIS is the same as the IRA and Timothy McVeigh. It's awesome. They don't even use the word terrorism. They're so progressive, man. What is AJ+? I wonder. I do an ounce of research into it. To my shock and horror, it's Al Jazeera. AJ is Al Jazeera Plus. And they've put this Muslim guy, and if he's not Muslim, he is of Muslim descent and has Muslim ties and is apologetic to the cause of Muslims and is working for Al Jazeera. And he's a Muslim. Who the fuck are we kidding? You got a Muslim guy throwing dead white people under the bus and comparing them to ISIS. Let's continue here. This cannot get any worse.
Why not? Because the term is loaded.
The radical Muslim terrorists hell-bent on killing us.
Wait, time out. What is loaded about that? What is loaded about that? You're telling me the Charlie Hebdo killers were not terrorists? Oh, and I love, they went to a Muslim clip. Okay. Oh, it's unfair that those Muslims were called terrorists? Is that the suggestion? Am I the only one going crazy in this world? They were terrorists. The Charlie Hebdo killers were terrorists. Can you believe it's come to this, where we have to go over this ground? This needs to be explained to these people. And I love how we didn't see a white example there. Oh, he just threw whites under the bus and falsely compared them to ISIS. Nobody is in favor of what the IRA did or what Timothy McVeigh did. They are not remotely comparable to ISIS. And yes, all three can easily be called terrorists. And all three are not remotely equivalent in terms of what they do, when they're doing it, which is of unbelievable importance, and the numbers that they represent. Not to mention the reasons why they're doing shit. So, but then yes, it's a loaded term. Now let's cut to a Muslim clip. Those poor Charlie Hebdo killers. Oh, wasn't it crazy when they got maligned by the media and they got called Muslim terrorists? That was terrible, right?
After all, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, even though you might disagree.
Yeah, and I'm beginning to think the Charlie Hebdo killers were your freedom fighters. Thank you, AJ+, for enlightening us. Thank you for bringing this level of investigation into the word terrorism. I thought it meant something. Turns out the people that killed 12 innocent cartoonists weren't terrorists.
A lot of media outlets aren't consistent in the way they use the word terrorist. A Muslim gunman? Immediately labeled a terrorist, but a white guy who flies a plane into a government building? Was it terror or just anger?
Oh, Ahmed, you poor guy. Oh, wow, the Muslims are just being tarred and feathered by the media. That's the real problem. It's not Muslims killing people. It's Muslims being called a dirty word, a word that is simply a description of what they do. So the negative connotations that are embedded in the word terrorism are an accurate reflection of the violent negative acts that Muslims do. Do not blame the messenger's word. You're blaming the word that the messenger is using to describe an event. If I come up to you and I say, hey, I just got back from the town square and I saw a guy who was raping a puppy. He was engaged in puppy rape. Do not then focus on my use of the phrase puppy rape and try to suggest that that is the problem. Me saying puppy rape is an accurate description of what the guy was doing in the town square. Go take it up with him, not with my choice of describing it as puppy rape, which it was.
A lot of media outlets aren't consistent in the way they use the word terrorist. A Muslim gunman, immediately labeled a terrorist, but a white guy who flies a plane into a government building? Was it terror or just anger?
Let's slow down again. A white guy who flies a plane into a building? I'll call it terrorism if you want. It could have been a suicide. It could have been something just insanely crazy. If the guy doesn't have a group that he's associated with, an ideology that he's doing this for, a political aim, then no, it's not. It's not terrorism, it's an act of lunacy. Just like the German pilot who crashed a plane killing 150 people, it's not really accurate to call that terrorism. Because he's not doing it for an ideology or a political cause. Does that mean it was good what he did? No, it's friggin' horrifying. I'm afraid to fly now. I was supposed to be on that plane. I was living in Barcelona, about to fly back to Germany, and I took a Germanwings flight a month prior. I was going to stay in Barcelona an additional month. I didn't. I could easily have been on that plane. This is splitting hairs, though. Whether you called what that German did terrorism or not, there's about 1,000 words that you could choose that accurately describes just how deplorable of an action that was. But no, it wasn't terrorism. That doesn't mean it's good. Just like this white guy. And I love how he's white. First of all, he could have been a white Muslim, you fucking racist. And here we go. We have a brown guy throwing white people under the bus, part 2. Part 2. The IRA, the Irish Republican Army, who are clearly involved in a political, geographical, cultural dispute in Northern Ireland, who are called terrorists when they were active. And then Timothy McVeigh, another white guy who's been hand-selected by this brown person. And now we get to white guy flies plane into building, and doesn't it suck because he wasn't labeled Al-Qaeda for doing it? Jesus Christ. This is racism, just so you people know. Get used to this. I, a white person, who, if you could see the tone of my ass, it is whiter than snow. I'm saying he's racist. Not reverse racist, racist.
And some people love to overuse it.
Now, Mr. Obama is playing terrorist whack-a-mole.
To pal around with terrorists?
Is Hamas a terrorist organization?
I love that they added that clip. And do you see this? Do you see how we're inching ever closer to fuck the Jews? A Junicorn reference is on the horizon. This guy is setting the table for his pro-Palestinian bullshit. So is Hamas a terrorist group? Let me answer that, brown guy. Yes, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Plain and simple.
Plain and simple!
They are the definition of a terrorist organization. If any group of people can be labeled terrorists, it's Hamas. And let's work backwards from that. How closely do you resemble Hamas? That's not a misuse of the word.
We don't try to answer that question. Instead, we describe the person or group's actions and let you guys make your own conclusions. Like when we covered the Charlie Hebdo attacks, we described them this way.
Gunmen stormed the office of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, reportedly opening fire on an editorial meeting and saying the Prophet Muhammad had been avenged.
You've got to love the people at AJ+. Now let me explain something to you. This group is fully funded. This is a propaganda wing targeting young people, targeting like the viral internet generation of a propaganda news agency who is dedicated to defending Muslims and to spreading their slant. This is not anything remotely objective here going on, just so you're aware of that. If Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister of the Nazis, was around during the internet, he would start something called the Nazi Youth YouTube channel, but instead he'd say the NY. NY plus. Now that's catchy. NY plus. And I love the music that they put. They put this, either it's happy music, it's like happy sort of upbeat music in the background, like, oh, this is a TV show. Oh my God, this is a commercial. Look at this. This music is setting a tone. Or they put like, oh, let's put the serious tone behind this woman. Listen to her say this again.
Gunmen stormed the office of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, reportedly opening fire on an editorial meeting and saying the Prophet Muhammad had been avenged.
Oh, it's so serious. It's not just a person regurgitating what's on a teleprompter that was written by somebody who has a clear agenda. No, this is cinematic. This has music behind it. And who has struck again? Let me sit up for this one. Gunmen. Their noble approach to describing the events of Charlie Hebdo is to call the people gunmen. Isn't that beautifully neutral? Gunmen have struck again. Gunmen and gunmanism is a destructive force that is widespread. It's just wreaking havoc all over the planet. Everybody look out for gunmen. Let's be willfully, intentionally, insidiously ignorant of the fact that these people were obviously Muslims. The headline should have said, Islamist, jihadist, Muslims do another blood-soaked terror attack for insane 7th century superstitious bullshit, and they have killed innocent people again. They were Muslims. That's how the headline should have been. It should not have been gunmen, you decide for yourself. These gunmen killed on behalf of Muhammad again for the billionth time during your lifetime. Oh, the transparency of AJ+. Yeah, let's drop the word terrorism because it seems to always describe people that look exactly like me. It seems to describe the people of my religion. And it really is sort of a bummer that it keeps coming back and haunts me almost. It's always about Muslims. So let's just drop the word and let's just replace it with neutral terms like gunmen. Nice try, Al Jazeera.
And even though the US government calls Hamas a terrorist organization, we describe them this way.
Hamas is a Palestinian political movement with an armed wing called the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades.
Wordy, perhaps, but accurate.
Well, that's a huge difference there. Hamas is a group that is internationally recognized as terrorists. I love how they say the US declares. Ask Israel what they declare it as. Ask Egypt what they declare it as. Yeah, a political movement. A political movement who were elected into office and then banned democracy. That seems legit. I also love this. A political movement with an armed wing that is definitional to the group, an armed wing that enforces everything the group says and is the entire impetus for the group. It's the core of the group to commit acts of violence against innocent civilians by way of rocket attack, suicide bombing, kidnappings, killings of all kinds. Oh, but let's call it the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades. Do you think that's better? Do you think we don't know what you're doing? It's the same goddamn group. Well, it's like saying, oh, the IRA, no, they're not the Irish Republican Army, they're not terrorists, and then just spouting off their name in Gaelic. Well, we don't call them terrorists, we call them this, their Gaelic name. That's not going to change anything. What they're doing is language terrorism right now. This is an assault to our collective intelligence.
The general meaning of terrorism has changed over the last century. It once referred to revolutionary movements, and then repressive governments. But today, there's actually no universal definition of terrorism, and the UN has been working on it for over 20 years.
Oh my God, I love this music. Bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong. You are watching something that is totally legit. It's cool because it has music in the background. Don't you know that this is like a TV commercial and it is fun to listen to him talk? Look at his goatee. This guy is brown and he works for Al Jazeera, which is a bullshit slanted news agency. And the Young Turks promote this horse shit. It's unbelievable. I don't know what I am doing with my life. Holy shit, I need some music of my own when I talk about this shit. Okay, let's try it. I will put some music of my own. Let's see how it works. Okay, Hey everybody, I have a new definition of terrorism. A lot of people are confused by it, it's a bit vague. I'm going to define the word terrorism as shit Muslims do, because that is an accurate assessment of what it actually is. Is it possible for non-Muslims to commit acts of terror? Sure it is, but it next to never happens. as evidenced by the 99% of terror attacks this year that were committed by Muslims. Go look up the stats your fucking self.
The US Department of Defense does have a definition though. They say terrorism is the unlawful use of violence or threat of violence often motivated by religious, political, or other ideological beliefs to instill fear and coerce governments or societies in pursuit of goals that are usually political. That's not broad at all.
That's not broad at all. It really isn't. If you want to add an additional word onto it, say religious terrorism, go for it. Political terrorism, fine. It's not going to get you away, Al Jazeera, from the fact that Muslims do this. They do bad things. How about that? Bad? Are you familiar with the word bad? Muslims do bad things. Your parents are idiots. That is the elephant in the room. Let's cut to the chase. You, sir, do not get to live forever, and your parents and you are fucking idiots who believe in flying horses and believe that following a pedophile beheader of people is a good life plan. You are a problem.
Oh, and the State Department and FBI? They have other definitions. We've decided not to use these labels, and we're not alone. Reuters has also banned these terms, and the BBC avoids them when they can. As with every rule, there is one exception. You might hear us use the T word when we attribute it to someone else, like when Lupe Fiasco says this.
My fight against terrorism, to me, the biggest terrorist is Obama.
You bet we'll cover it. Words have a lot of meaning, and we want to make sure that we're getting it right. So how are we doing? Let us know.
You're doing terrible. I love that. Wait. How are you going to cover Lupe Fiasco saying Obama is the biggest terrorist? Because that is wildly insane. And I love how you didn't take a stance on that. Because I'm sure you'd be like, well, he's got a point. He's got a point there. Let's spread it out. Let's create false equivalents. No, AJ+, no, I'm seeing through you. This is amazing. I will be looking at your channel. I will be investigating just how much insanity you pump out. I became aware of you because the Young Turks were stroking your cock and did a video to highlight your channel. You are obviously working in tandem with the Young Turks. That doesn't seem suspicious. No. And a friend of the Young Turks is an enemy of mine. Hello.